Shalom to all of you. Real pleasure to speak to you today. Over these awesome days, as I call the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, those awesome days, I've had a conversation with Ann, my wife, and my 3 daughters on what faith means to them. And each, of course, had their unique and individual viewpoint. There are as many views as there are people. You know, in speaking to friends and congregants over the many, many years, people profess different kinds of faith. Some in a being beyond us who had a grand plan. Another felt that it was an exercise in creating a deeper inner life, while another saw faith as aspirational, that we need God to provide an ideal to strive towards. Faith, it seems, was not connected to any specific dogma. In a moment, we'll sing V'chol Ma'aminim, and we all believe with great fervor. We use a lovely and catchy tune. And as with Kol Nidre, the tune is what inspires many of us and distracts us from the words we are actually saying. V'chol Ma'aminim is a 7th century piyut poem attributed to a Palestinian poet, Yanai. It is a literary gem, utilizing a double acrostic and other subtle literary devices, and it has retained its essential place in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services for 13 centuries, not too shabby for a non-biblical text. However, if I linger on the words, I ask myself if I am a ma'amin, a believer. Do I faithfully absorb the momentous affirmations in this liturgical poem? I am always engaging in the struggle of faith and doubt. Perhaps it is a result of my biography as a child of survivors of the Shoah. I live in a constant state of loss, the loss of millions, including 1.5 million children. As a child of survivors, I experienced a deep sense of loss of my own family, a grandfather, dozens of aunts and uncles and cousins, extended family, and a half-sister. These losses always cloud my heart and mind. I constantly live with this faceless and nameless, constant phantom family, and these losses challenge my faith. Because of this immense break in the covenantal relationship of God and the Jewish people in the Shoah, remember, one doesn't need millions to question the existence of a loving and just God. The loss of a baby in her infancy, the death of a loved one, be it by illness or a tragic accident, we struggle to retain our faith. I struggle with faith and doubt and continue to do so. And this doubt, despite all other ongoing doubts, I have still devoted my life to the continuity of the Jewish people. I feel a deep need to continue the legacy of our people left to us as trustworthy stewards. Now, over the years, I have come to some resolution of my Shoah dilemma. When I stopped asking the question, where was God during the Khurban, the destruction, another more threatening and challenging question rose up to test my faith. Where was humanity? Where were those enlightened Europeans who preached the now specious philosophy of ever-ongoing development of reason, progress, and the refinement of human character? Not where was God, but where were those to extinguish the earliest sparks of hate from growing into a devastating conflagration? So freedom of will, which is a central feature of our traditions, prompts me to say, why does and do people make horrible choices in the name of an idolatrous ideology? And this failure of humankind has tested my faith. And what is most horrendous and frightening is that those who made these choices were all human beings like us. Can we have faith in humanity? Now, we just read in Utana Tokef a few moments ago that the clarion call of the shofar Gadol Yitaka, with its piercing sound, is balanced by the small, still voice, Yishama, that we will hear. The shofar Gadol proclaims our faith in the Rabbono Shalom, the master of the universe, and the still, small voice, Kol Demama Daka, is the voice of consolation that is within us. The thrilling blasts of the shofar proclaim a God of salvation and redemption, and the still small voice, a God of consolation. The shofar Gadol proclaims faith. The still small voice has room to harbor our struggles with faith and doubt. The Deus ex machina, God who appears in the third act in the Greek tragedy to resolve conflict, was not very apparent during the Shoah. However, my mother in a Nazi labor camp did hear the small voice, the still small voice of the little God, her personal little God, not the God of salvation, but the God of consolation. She called that God, Gotenu, my little God, who was familiar to her from her personal prayers. He was a familiar Hamish deity. Gotenu, who enters into your sorrow with you. Gotenu, the God sharing our sorrow, while loud blasts of the shofar proclaim our being judged. Gotenu imbues us with the capacity to love. Gotenu embeds in our consciousness, as the sages taught, like the Shekhinah, the indwelling divine presence that went into exile with the Jewish people after Churban Abayit, the destruction of the ancient temple in Jerusalem. It is the Shekhinah within us, through the still small voice, that emboldens us to live with both faith and doubt. But after catastrophe, doubts remained. Faith had to be fashioned anew. In a way, for Jews, faith was made dispensable and gave way to action. Rabbi Heschel taught us that to be a Jew, we need not to make a leap of faith, but a leap of action. And this leaves room for our struggle between faith and doubt. The Unatana Tokef we just recited portrays God as a divine accountant, counting his sheep, passing the shepherd's staff. This divine accounting shakes us from our slumber. As sheep, we have no control. We have no control over who shall live and who shall die. Every sheep in the flock lives in the shadows of predators that cannot be fended off. So too, we can't fend off the losses we endure. In Unatana Tokef, the Piyut opines that this is all predestined. But there are ways to mitigate the decree, as we read, since we never know when we will die. We are given tools: tshuva, return, recalibration, tefillah, introspection, reflection, an appeal to our higher selves, and tzedakah, giving of oneself beyond ourselves, to our community and to the world's needs. This is only a support when we come to grips with the end of that piyut, which says, we are nothing but dust, and come from dust, and to dust we will return, that all of life is a fleeting breath, a dream passing by. There's a great value in doubt as we struggle with faith. American writer Mary Gordon, a practicing Catholic, spoke about the value of doubt. She says, the ability to question, the ability to take a skeptical position is absolutely central to my understanding of myself and my understanding of myself as a religious person. She argues that faith without doubt is just either nostalgia or a kind of addiction. When asked if doubters have anything to offer believers, Gordon responded, if it weren't for atheists and agnostics, there would be no enlightenment, for example. Many of the ideas which I most prize as an American, as a woman, as someone living in a relatively free society, have come to me from people who were agnostic or atheist. Another English scholar of religion, John Cornwall, a practicing Christian, describes the inevitability of doubt for those aspiring to belief. Reflecting on his own struggles with faith, he writes, faith is a journey without arrival, a journey without arrival, complicated by false turns, breakdowns, dead ends, and wheel changes. Faith, like love, is seldom entirely constant, nor is it irrevocable. He prefers the novelist Graham Greene's articulation of faith as doubt of doubt, rather than faith as an unshakable certainty. In a wonderful teaching I found by Rabbi Susan Moss, who's a palliative care chaplain in Connecticut, she tells us that V'chol Ma'aminim is a change in message from U'etana Tokef. It is a welcome jolt. She says that in V'chol Ma'aminim we take a deep breath and speak into being the order that we crave in our chaotic, uncertain lives. V'chol Ma'aminim is an appeal to ourselves and how to see ourselves in relation to our own faith and doubt. But how can we honestly say that we believe all of these things besides the potency of the poem? And are we really talking about belief? Are we really talking about faith? Or are we getting an opportunity, perhaps, to expose our doubts? Rabbi Moss tells us it is challenging to read this poetic prayer as a literal declaration of faith. It might even be painful to say these words out loud as we gaze out into our broken, messy world. But V'chol Ma'aminim can be read instead as an aspirational proclamation of hope, a commitment to discover light in the darkness, and perhaps to manufacture it for ourselves. But friends, I ask you, is hope enough? Does hope extinguish our frustrations and doubts? Does being hopeful mean that we can avoid the chaos we face? What hope provides is a launching pad for a new trajectory that transcends the strife we see all around us. V'chol Ma'aminim invites us to hear the way in which all of our hopes and wishes reverberate in unison, and together we are invited to bring order and stability of our dreams into reality. I hope that in building TBZ, we have provided access to the power of our past events of faith. Rabbi Heschel taught not just through private reflection, but by coming together in community, we gather in the high holidays to remember together the possibility of faith, to create sacred space, sacred time, and a sacred assembly, a mikra kodesh in the words of the Torah, that lets us reaffirm collectively the parts of ourselves that want to believe. He says, not the individual man, nor a single generation can erect the bridge that leads to God. Faith is the achievement of ages, an effort accumulated over centuries, and many of its ideas are as the light of a star that left its source centuries ago. Many songs unfathomable today are the resonance of voices of bygone times. There is a collective memory of God in the human spirit, and it is this memory of which we partake in our faith. In my life, I benefit from a scaffolding of hope and faith built by those who came before me. It's that support that allows me to challenge or repel my doubts and share in the faith that Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. The eternity of the children of Israel is no deceit. It wasn't my parents' journey to build a new life in a new country without language and education, and their tenacity, their refusal to give up, that bolstered my faith in the eternity of Israel. Perhaps that's what faith is: perseverance, never giving up. And this is the reason that despite the challenges of our traditional liturgy presents us, we at TBZ hold them dear. We see it as a millennial effort to build an edifice that goes beyond the building, but finds our foundation in our souls and psyches. A foundation that is strong enough to withstand both faith and doubt. We reach back to our past to enrich our present and to nurture our future. We stay connected to the aspirations of those who came before us and try, as well as we can, to pass on to future generations all of that upon a firm foundation. But how can we avoid offering our deep connections to our tradition not out of nostalgia and rote? It is doubt that will challenge us to re-examine our connection to Yiddishkeit, not as an ancient relic to be worshipped, but rather a living and nourishing tree of life. Our continuity as a community and as a people demands not only our devotion to Tikkun Olam that takes us out into the world, but it is Tikkun HaNefesh, the repair of the recesses of our souls that ensures our future as a community and as a people. And as our bloodied history has shown us, it is Tikkun HaNefesh that ultimately gives us that strength and perseverance. And how do we make that faith that we have, that perseverance palpable in our lives and those of that come after us? How do we instill the faith that Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker, that there is a destiny for the Jewish people yet in this world? We have yet much to contribute. How will we give over the fact that they are the first, perhaps, generation now in many, many years facing a challenge to their Jewish identities, facing a challenge to Jewish existence here and around the globe? Now, will the coming generation imbibe our commitments in both their personal and public lives? Will our next generation share this faith in our people and what they still can contribute to the world? We answer these questions on Yom Kippur deep within us, and then we bring them out into the world with Sukkot. In Sukkot, we exhibit ourselves as Jews outside the confines of our safety and boundary. Without Sukkot and its ending in joy, none of this process works. To be joyful to be a Jew, not to be Jewish, but to be a Jew. It's like that show, Blackish. You're not really black, you're blackish. Maybe we should have a show, Jewish. Now, I will join us in community to sing V'chol Ma'aminim with fervor from the depths of uncertainty. This high holiday piyut invites me to call out the steadfast faith we may aspire to. I found a beautiful prayer from Rabbi Julia Andelman, who sums it up very well with this bracha. May we find ourselves in a high holiday community that allows us to simultaneously hold our doubts and also the faith and traditions that are so dear to us. May it be a season of forgiving ourselves for the doubts we may have and of celebrating those doubts, for giving us the opportunity to nuance our faith so that we may rediscover in time and again, what and when we had less than expected. Let this opportunity that we have to nuance our lives, to live not blandly with rote and addiction, but let it be a time for expansion of spirit and a place where both faith and doubt could live. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so.